Okay, I'll call this regular council meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. Mr. Thompson, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You remain standing for a moment, please. Heavenly Father, as we enter into the season of renewal, we thank you for the longer days, the sunshine, and yes, the rain. We see your handiwork, O Lord, as the color returns to the earth, and we thank you for this yearly reminder that all is not dark and cold, and we rejoice in the promise of spring. Lord, we ask tonight for your guidance and strength in our decisions, and we ask for all of this in your holy name. Amen. Okay, Kathy, roll, please.
Carter? Yes. Here. Walter?
Here.
Howe?
Here.
Barstow?
Here.
Hayes? Here. Hicken?
Here.
Lee?
Here. Okay, we have a quorum present and a full house, what I like to see. First thing on the agenda tonight is citizens' comments, and before we get started on citizens' comments, we do have a special guest, Nate Strum from Crow-Licking County, with an update. Nate, do you want to make your way up here? And as we get into citizens' comments tonight, if one of your neighbors is going to, we'll need your name and your address, of course, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak. But if one of your neighbors pretty much says the same thing that you're saying, if you'd for the element of time, if you'd save that for maybe another meeting, or at least tell us that that's your feelings also, so that we don't repeat ourselves. Nate, how are you doing, sir?
I'm well, Mayor. How is everyone on the council this evening? I wanted to come in and talk a little bit about what's going on with Crow-Licking County.
Go ahead and give us your name and
Sure.
address for the record, please.
Nate Strum. I serve as Executive Director for Crow-Licking County Community Improvement Corporation. My address is 50 West Locust Street, Newark, Ohio, 43058. I handed this out to most of the council members. I believe the mayor, I think all council members in the mayor got a copy of this. I wanted to thank the council for letting me borrow your mayor. He actually helped produce this document. So one of the things that we've been really working on in the last 12 months as we've been continuing to engage business attraction opportunities is really message refinement. And so this partnership guide is something that's come out of that for the last 12 months. The mayor sits on our marketing committee for Crow-Licking County and has really been able to help hone the message as to what's going on. As you flip through it, you can find out, I find this to be a very succinct document that helps us frame out what Licking County's advantages are, and certainly some of our local municipalities where our properties are located at. You'll see the centerfold local opportunities in an expanding region, highlighting our local workforce opportunities, population access, where our current sites are going in. You'll note right on number 4 is the Taft Corporate Park, JRS, our workforce development opportunities. That's been a real key driver for us as it relates to workforce development activities, promoting our local workforce as well as the skills development, especially when doing attraction pieces as well as expansion. And then some of our numbers since 2005 as it relates to manufacturing specifically. I know when I've come to this council previously, we've talked a lot about doing IT opportunities, data center type opportunities. Well, as some of you know on the council from having conversations with me previously, we've run into some snags as it relates to some utility capacities in some of our areas. And so we find that having the manufacturing conversation is probably our strongest foot forward when engaging a lot of business attraction areas. And then in the back of the packet, I tucked away a couple different things here. One, we recently engaged with Site Selection Magazine on an investment profile for Licking County, talking about manufacturing, IT, and logistics as our chief industries, and so you can see some of that writing and what that avenue is. Sneak peek, this will be released tomorrow morning at our annual breakfast, but you guys did it tonight. Our annual report highlights some of our successes from last year, some of our programs, and then I actually printed up a couple of things just for Pataskala. So we've recently engaged with EMSI for data. So this kind of walks you through a little bit of what's going on in Pataskala. Now I will caution you when you start looking at some of the numbers, it does fold in areas that aren't city limits, but zip code limits for Pataskala, so you'll see some skewing in the data. But I wanted to share that report with you, as well as one of the things that we're working on this year. We annually hold, I know a number of you from council attend our ED 101 program. We've held it at Denison, I think, the last 2 years. We focus on different programs and incentive programs and just keeping our finger on the pulse of what's going on in economic development. One of the things we're going to highlight this year is things I think I actually believe have been talked about here at this council chamber, actually. MORPS's 2050 plan, the population growth projections for Central Ohio, and then the BIA's recent analysis on housing needs for Central Ohio, specifically Licking County. I printed up 2 of those documents from an executive summary standpoint, just as a reference piece, but I think we'll be talking from an ED 101 standpoint later this year with William Murdoch or someone from his staff coming to talk a little bit about population, how that drives economic development, rooftops specifically, and then what we can be doing from a best practice standpoint to help our communities not get pushed aside or steamrolled in some of these conversations. So we'll make sure some of that information is shared. I'll let you read this at your leisure. I mean, I sent it out last week, but if you have any questions about any of the activities that Licking County is undertaking or anything specific, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you this evening. Actually, I have a video because I want to show the mayor in all his glory as well. You're welcome, Mayor. I highlighted this earlier. Workforce development is one of the biggest things we've got facing Licking County right now. And so I wanted to highlight a program that we've been working on called Licking County Works. It's part of our occupational marketing campaign. We're highlighting 3 key area drivers for industry, manufacturing, healthcare, IT, and finance. This will be run out tomorrow morning, but you guys get a sneak peek of the final cut tonight. You're welcome, Mayor.
We have the jobs.
We have the communities.
We have the lifestyle.
We have the tools to help you succeed.
We just need you.
We just need you.
We just need you.
We just need you.
Find your future at lickingcountyworks.com.
So that program is a joint venture between Grow Licking County, the Licking County Chamber of Commerce, and Ohio Means Jobs Licking County. Our goal is to micro-target talent. So we're not only targeting local talent within our various communities that might have certain skills that have they commute or they're not located or in zip codes that are being targeted, but they're also targeting those outside of our local communities to kind of come into our communities and work here locally in those defined industries. We're utilizing RevLocal here in Granville to help with our micro-targeting. So we utilize platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn to kind of get that information, as well as social media, search engine optimization through Bing and Google to kind of press that. That'll probably launch in the next 2 weeks, final, once we get the widget from, search widget from PJ. And then we'll be able to bring back some initial data showing who's been able to integrate to the site, what our click-through rates are, what our application job numbers are, and kind of bring that hard data back. So with that, I turn it to this council with any questions or comments you might have.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you sending that stuff out early so that the council could absorb that over the weekend. I know you're in constant contact with BJ and some of the other members of council that reach out to you periodically for questions and inquiries. So I thank you for that. Any questions from council? Tim?
Yeah, I want to make sure, you talked about a skewing. I think what you were referring to is you took in everybody in 43062, is that correct?
Yes, sorry. Yes, it grabbed everybody in that zip code rather than it was defined within the city limits or not.
And I just wanted to make sure that that's the region that you're talking about with
Yes.
33,000 people. And
Yes.
Thank you. That was it. It was you. Well done, thank you.
Andy?
Nate, besides feedback, obviously, about infrastructure, when you're talking to site selectors, what other feedback are you getting, whether the businesses are positive about Pataskala or even if they're negative about Pataskala?
In general, from the city of Pataskala standpoint, from what I'm hearing, it's all very positive. Everything is driven by rooftops, so it's all about population-driven conversations. The larger of a mile radius that I have to pull to show, population driver, available workforce number, it hurts our numbers. But here in Pataskala, given your proximity to Columbus, it's a key driver that helps us share that narrative and to kind of make those opportunities more realistic. I will caution, one of the things that's kind of limited what we've been able to do specifically in the city, one of your key sites, the former JRS over here, was under option by AEP, and so we weren't able to put in for a lot of opportunities last year. With their option expiring at the end of last year, it's my understanding that the underlying landowner is now engaging a local brokerage, and so we were able to better target and market those sites for economic-based opportunities.
Go ahead.
Can I wrote down the word steamroll.
Sure.
What do you mean by that?
What I've seen in a lot of other communities is trying to work through, and not necessarily referring to Pataskala, but other spaces that aren't ready for some of the growth that's coming, and so being able to implement best practice opportunities from whether it's a housing, parks, green space, just general development protocol. It's one of the reasons why I was hoping to work with the team over at Morpsey and some others to kind of help shape that conversation with the theme of this year's ED 101 just being general population and what our communities can be better prepared to address some of that.
Yes, you can.
I don't know if you're aware or not, we're working through a comprehensive plan draft at this point in time. Is that something that you've worked with other communities to help them formulate some of those
Yes.
kind of issues to make sure you don't get steamrolled?
Sure. Currently, I've been working with 2 other communities here in Licking County on their comp plans or variants of their plans, as well as directly engaging with other of their staff on just as sidebars or sharing data. I mean, looking at the MZ information that I shared this evening, I can pull variations of that data based on economic drivers, rooftops, drive times, trends, tendencies, and next 10-year projections pretty easily in a lot of different segments. So I certainly can lend that insight if necessary or requested.
Okay, good. One more. Sure. Last time you were here, you were talking about education.
Yep.
And the value of educating either the local population or providing for maybe not college education,
Sure.
but
Trades.
first trades.
Mm-hmm.
What progress have you made since, and I mean, you don't have to go into a big, we're not gonna be here all night, obviously, because you will tell me all night, I'm sure. What, in general, have you moved forward with the trades? Because
Sure.
trades is a huge issue
Absolutely.
right now, not only in Licking County, but Central Ohio.
Candidly, our offices, and actually, if you look into the annual report, I think it's the Centerfold actually. It talks a lot about our workforce development. We actually been working with Licking County Foundation and CTEC to develop MIST, Manufacturing Industrial Skills Trade Program. We've gotten 15 grads through the program already, 15 in placement, one's continuing education, one deployed in another field. We're hoping to grow that program over time. It's a $5,000 a year scholarship, specifically geared towards those in skilled trades, multi-craft maintenance, welding, CNC machining. We're seeing a lot of opportunity there, and we're bringing a lot of private development partners, specifically industry partners, to the table now. What was initially Port Authority Southgate type funded program is now expanded. I think it's listed in the write-up with some of our other industry partners, and we're aggressively pursuing more.
Where does that happen again? Does that happen at
At
CTEC?
CTEC.
Okay, here in Pataskala?
No, CTEC, that's COTC.
Oh, COTC, I'm sorry, CTEC's the other way, I'm sorry, yeah, okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Mr. Lee?
Hey, thanks for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
Really not a question, more of just a general comment.
Sure.
Feel free to address it. You and I have talked about this before. First, I just want to say that I do appreciate every time that I've had questions. You've been very responsive when you've talked. You've been very helpful and had a lot of good insight for me as I navigate and learn how all this works. For me, and I've shared this with the mayor as well, I have a concern with the makeup of a small majority of your board.
Sure.
And I say that because I feel like there's a little bit of a conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's nothing that you can do about
Sure.
it. I know there's nothing that the mayor can do about it. But I think that we know that we didn't get Project Oriole. We all know that that was a big loss for us. As we sit back, and I know we've all talked about this as well, and we kind of dissect out why did we lose it? It was water. We know that. But when that discussion was happening, I feel like a person that may have been involved in that, I'm going to keep this as professional as possible and not name names, I just don't think that's right, but the professionalism was not there, the knowledge of the product was not there, and I'm not going to say that that person is the reason we lost that, because you just can't pull water out of the ground, right? The water just wasn't there. But that person also sits on your board. So who are you representing? Are you representing your own interests, or are you working for Grow Licking County and trying to sell Grow Licking County? So I'm not asking for a response. I'm just telling you, I'd like to make that public. That's a concern for me, and I feel it's only fair to put it out there.
Sure. And I appreciate that, Councilman, and I'll say this, and the mayor knows this very well. Following a lot of those conversations, and that, specifically that instance, Grow Licking County as an organization reflected back on its code of conduct, and now all board members, when doing business on behalf of Grow Licking County, must declare conflicts of interest formally. We do that on a yearly basis on a signed statement, and then if and when there's a conflict that arises from their other sworn duties or other conflicts, they're excluded from representing Grow Licking County in those conversations.
So
Organizational.
that's new for this year?
Yeah. Well, we've had it on the books 2 years. Yeah, we've had it on the books. We brought it forth hardline.
So it's been on the books, it just hasn't been enforced.
I wasn't aware of it.
You guys are aware of it?
Yes,
It's a
sir.
concern. I
Understood.
appreciate it. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Any other questions for Nate? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Nate. All right, now we'll move into citizens' comments.
Take my Mayor Compton video back and have that for tomorrow morning.
Oh,
That's
man.
something I'll never get into acting. After a half hour of saying that line, I was.
We have the community.
Yeah.
It took
But
you
it's
half
very
an hour to get
realistic.
that down?
He kept asking me to do it over and over and over.
Just one line.
It was one line, and it took forever.
You'd have been good for that.
I went to the trailer then and had a couple of daiquiris. Okay, who wishes to speak tonight? Sir? I'll need your name and address, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Following a reference to daiquiris, I'm not sure, I'll attempt to be brief. My name is Malcolm Porter. I work for the Building Industry Association of Central Ohio, the BIA, at 445 Hutchison Avenue in Columbus.
Very good.
Earlier today, you received, as members of council, a letter from John Melkai, who's the BIA Executive Director. John unfortunately had a previous commitment and couldn't be here tonight, so I am here on his behalf, and I don't intend to read the letter to you. You have that and the materials. But given Nate's presence tonight with the update and your discussion and decision last week around the Hunter's Crossing, we thought it would be a good time to ask for a few minutes of your time around sharing the research that the BIA study that was sent to you shows over the region. Talk about our interest in trying to establish some sort of working group to work collaboratively with the city around housing and economic development issues, and also to ask for some of your consideration around projects like Hunter's Crossing. I won't go through the details, but if you look at the study, the very clear message is if you go back 30 years, there is a direct relationship between creation of jobs and creation of housing. In fact, at 267,000 new jobs and 267,000 new housing units of apartment and single family over the last 30 years, it is a one-to-one correlation. The challenge is that in the last 10 years, coming out of the Great Recession, if you will, that we have dropped off on this rate, and we are no longer creating housing at the rate we're creating jobs. This underbuilding of the market is resulting in significant increase in both rent and housing price, which we all are dealing with. In Licking County specifically, in the last 10 years, we're now at a ratio of 4 new jobs for every 1 new housing unit in this county. That is not a sustainable pattern from our perspective. As a result of the release of the study over the last number of weeks, we've begun to meet with local governments and council meetings and commissioner meetings like this one to share the learning and begin to have discussions with stakeholder groups about how we might go about looking for solutions to address these challenges. In Fairfield County, Union County, Delaware County, and at city levels in Lancaster, as well as Delaware City and Marysville, we have begun this work, and we're working with Napier and Licking County on what the best way is to go forward. From our perspective, constructing silos in a local economy that segregate housing from commercial, retail, and industrial development is a fraught approach that will end up with unintended consequences in today's economy. Housing is more and more seen in connection with local retail locations and workers for commercial and industrial sites. Travel and commuting times and their impact on shopping behavior and workforce accessibility is more and more a part of the location calculation for retail, commercial, and industrial development. Not finding proximate housing solutions risks not being able to attract the retail, commercial, and industrial development that communities seek. We suggest some form of a work session with the city in whatever way, as well as your community stakeholders around issues of economic development. And we would pledge from our side to bring responsible representatives who are honest brokers of information and seek to find solutions that can address concerns of multiple stakeholders. School growth, traffic, community infrastructure are all challenges that need to be met. Separating housing from other forms of development is not the way, from our perspective, to meet those challenges. The Hunter Crossing experience is perhaps an interesting example for both Pataskala and the development community. The proposal calling for 2/3 of its units to be empty nester housing and 1/3 single-family housing for new and existing residents of the community. And reflecting today's demand of families wanting smaller yards, over 35% open space was aggregated for community use. Let me talk about smaller yards, because many times it gets equated for lack of quality. However, it's just not an accurate perception. In this case, expected price ranges of $300,000 for empty nester homes and $350,000 for single-family homes. I would note that every year the BIA sponsors a parade of homes, which is our showcase example of single-family industry in Central Ohio. This year's parade of homes is in Delaware County at Evans Farms and is organized under a very similar principle of smaller lots with combined open and community spaces. What's the message being conveyed to developers with the rejection of Hunter Crossing? Message is in the eye of the beholders, and I know council members have strong feelings from your perspective, but allow me to share from a developer's perspective.
1 minute, sir.
Point of view. It would be understandable for developers to question whether or not investment is wanted here. The rejection of a development that has empty nester space alone creating $40 million for the tax base and no generation of school children, and yet the school district has concern and opposition about that. Does that mean Pataskala really wants no growth, no development, no new retail shoppers, no new employees for new employers? If I'm a developer looking to develop retail, restaurant, commercial, industrial, would I consider other parts of the region? I doubt very much that that was what is intended. Housing issues are complicated. We believe the market is rapidly changing, and we would like to engage in a constructive manner with the city and your stakeholders for a comprehensive look. And in the meantime, we urge your careful consideration on projects as they come forward, as they did last week, and as you had hearings earlier yet tonight. Thanks for your time.
Yep.
Happy to try to answer any questions. There's a lot of information in that study that we can provide details for anybody with interest in that.
We allowed to ask questions?
Council's pleasure for questions tonight? Yes or no?
Yeah. Come on, we out here to talk to us.
Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, I just,
Suzanne?
yeah, I'm for it.
Andy?
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
fine, I'm fine.
Todd?
Yeah, we got a few questions.
Mike? Mel? Tim? Who has the first question?
Kyle's got a couple, I have one.
Go ahead.
I understand that, you know, you're representing, you have a job to do, you're representing the guy, I get that. But I think it's pretty loud and clear, I mean, and I don't wanna speak for all council, so I'll just speak for myself. I don't think anybody's against growth. What I don't wanna see is, I don't wanna see houses stacked on houses. 5 foot between a house. I don't personally wanna see that here. And I think that you've got a job to do because that's your job to sell that. But I think that, I think for you to come out and say, tell us we're against growth, I don't think that's fair. I think there's a certain type of growth we're looking for, I'm looking for, I can't speak for everybody, I wanna be careful there. But to just come out and say, because we turned down Summit Glen, we're against growth, that's not the case at all. We need houses, we need rooftops, H. Strum said it. But personally, I can't get behind these developments that are just stacked upon each other and the multifamily, that's not what we're looking for.
So, and I tried to be careful in how I chose that you all would have your own strong views, and I was trying to share from a developer standpoint what the perspective would be. We're not in the business of building homes that people don't wanna buy. And so the side yard setback that you make a reference to is in part a reflection from a changing marketplace as people are looking for less work and not having options to be able to have opportunity where there's less yard work and such involved. It's not something that, from our standpoint, we wanna create something that people don't want to buy. That's obviously not in our best interest. So we see it, and I respect your perspective, I just say there's a portion of the marketplace that's out there that is looking for that kind of housing.
There's a lot of land to be developed around here. How about some nice lots, big lots, 1 acre lots, a little bit, they might cost a little bit more. Why do we have to jam them all in? We don't need that. We've got enough of that. We've got enough multifamily that aren't occupied. I get it. Your job is to represent the builder for growth, and I get it. And I don't want you to come across that way, but understand our perspective too. From my perspective.
I get that perspective, and I guess I was trying to communicate a part of this from our experience in dealing in lots of different communities, not just here in Damasko, is understanding that connection between creating a range of rooftop options and what goes into the equation for retail and commercial and industrial, and not see the residential just in isolation on its own.
Thank you.
I understand your perspective.
Okay. Appreciate you coming out.
Agree and disagree, yeah.
Thank you.
Andy?
I'm interested in hearing maybe just a little bit more about this opportunity for a time to sit down and understand your market research. Is that something that, and I think in your letter, actually, you didn't write that, but John had suggested a work study of some type. Have you done this before in other municipalities with the council or with planning and zoning?
So we're a work in progress. You made reference to your comp plan. Delaware City is undergoing a comp plan rewrite right now. So we provided that data to Delaware City. They invited us to participate in sharing the learning through their comp plan process. Other communities have responded different ways. In Marysville, for example, Honda and Scotts is actually involved in asking us through their development department to come and talk. They have challenges in attracting workforce for their communities. It's a little different in each area. We intentionally, when we released the report, which was in December, we did not have, here are 10 solutions. Each community is going to respond in its own way. What works for Pataskala doesn't necessarily work, in Delaware County or Union or Columbus.
That's, I guess, exactly where I'm going.
We're not trying to be.
Pataskala is rather unique. We're a developing community, so having that information up front would be very helpful to avoid mistakes that either are perceived or actual, as we've heard from residents. So I guess my question is, the information that you're suggesting that we may sit down through a work study, is that information you have? Do you have that kind of stuff, to market research that you can share with, for instance, our planning and zoning or our planning department, so that we can understand from council's point of view, these proposed developments as they're being put in front of us, because we don't get a lot of necessarily know what's going on in Delaware or anywhere else, and quite frankly, may not care but we are very interested in what would fit in Pataskala.
All 170 pages are on the website. We sent in that letter the Licking County portion, which I think is a 4 or 5 page summary. In terms of market research, just to be clear, there is not preferential survey research. This is job creation related and income related measurement for the kind of housing stock that exists and what would be demanded in the future based on job creation numbers. It's not, I like 3 bedrooms with a bath on the first floor, you know.
No, I believe it's more complex than that. So
We
that's
did
what
not
I'm asking
engage
about.
in that. We have had people ask us to do that. We don't have the resources to.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Barstow?
I was at the, Mr. Melky came and spoke at the Pataskala Chamber of Commerce, for a meeting that was held, I think it was the day after our, the council meeting, I believe it was. It seems, so I was interested in listening to him. What I didn't appreciate, was somebody asked a question, about how, well, the local community had just turned down one of that, and he launched into a not so nice, a not so nice view of local officials that I think he thought were sort of narrow-minded. What I found interesting was your recent, and I agree with Mr. Lee completely, and Mrs. Hayes, you were talking about larger lots or side lots or larger or more space between houses. Here's the question I'd like you to ask Mr. Melky, and he could respond to me if he wants. Why, when he purchased his home in Worthington, did he also purchase a large side lot? If he thinks that's not good for us, but it's okay for him.
I'll certainly ask him.
Sure.
I'll just volunteer that as a 59-year-old, I moved recently to an apartment and sold my 50-foot lot house that I lived in. So everybody has different perspectives, and Council President, I'm not trying to suggest that one size fits all. We're looking for a multitude, but I will share your perspective with John.
His perspective was that one size fits all, and we need to get on board with the Schottenstein program. So let me say this. I don't listen to Mr. Schottenstein. He doesn't live here, okay? I don't listen to lobbyists to tell me what to do for the building industry. Okay, I listen to my constituents. I listen to the business owners that have businesses here, and I listen to the other stakeholders in the community, the schools and things like that. That's who I pay attention to. Thank you.
Mr. Powell, anything?
I want to say that I agree with everything that Mr. Lee said wholeheartedly, and I also want to say that I understand, you know, the market trends and stuff like that. I don't want to make decisions based on trends that could be cyclical. In 20 years, people want something else. I don't want to make decisions for the short term. I want to make decisions for the long term and what's best for Pataskala. So if something's going on in Delaware County or wherever, that's fine for them. It may not be right for Pataskala, and that's what I base my decisions on.
Mrs. Carter?
I'm just gonna say, I've grown tired of when people come in and tell us that we don't understand development or growth or what brings it. The last decision we made was difficult. We had a long discussion about it, very respectful discussion. But what I will say is the only people who stood in this council chamber and told us to build that development was developers. Not one constituent reached out to me and said, yes, I want that. When we sat and talked about building responsibly, we're talking about building our infrastructure. Sir, have you driven any of our artery roads? Have you gone from 70 to 161 and driven on the less than 2-lane roads that barely have lines on them? Because they don't support it. We don't have enough police officers to cover our city now. So we do not have enough to bring in for developers to line their pockets. We are certainly not against development, but I do not appreciate the walk out of here at different meetings and talk about it as if we're small-minded, narrow-minded, or we have no idea what we're doing. We listen to our constituents. We don't vote everything. In fact, I think this is the first thing we voted down in a long time. So it's probably the wrong night for you to come in a little too soon. Thank you.
Mr. Hicken?
I appreciate you coming in and offering us what, the expertise on the building stuff that Andy's gonna have. I thought it was interesting when you sent us the data, you specifically had, I don't know if you're familiar with that data, you had Austin, Charlotte, Nashville, showing a trend that those
places were, you know, and Columbus essentially was lagging. Having driven in Charlotte and Nashville, it's an absolute nightmare. And I was kind of wondering to myself, was there a building boom there before those communities were able to get their infrastructure feet under them? And I think that's part of what you hear, right, you know, from those of us up here. We know that, we know the shape our roads are in. We're desperately trying to improve the city. And we'll continue, I would think that I would echo what has been said, and that we'll continue to vote, you know, what the people, what are our hearts, and what the people tell us they want. And sometimes we don't, but, when I saw those other cities on there, they're absolute nightmares to drive. And Mrs. Carter's correct, our roads are extremely busy. More rooftops, schools, we're gonna have to move, we're gonna have to grow commensurately. That's all.
First rule when you're in a hole is to stop digging. I just wanted to, if I could, just make a quick reference as to why those three cities were listed there. And those are cities that are regions that are comparable in income level, comparable in population, and are in the Columbus 2020 Nate Strom world are our economic competitors. So they were there for those reasons.
I wasn't sure if it had.
How that was chosen, so. But as I said,
on the graph.
I understand for many people I'm in the hole here tonight, so I should
Listen.
end sooner rather than later.
Listen, I appreciate, you know, these are discussions we need to have as a city. Last council meeting obviously was a shift in a direction where we need to start speaking and talking and working on some issues that we have. You've heard a lot of them tonight, so I do appreciate you coming here and talking to us tonight.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Yes, Mr. Garavuso. Name and address for the record, please.
Steve Garavuso. I live at 121 Claiborne Drive in the city of Pasco. I both live here and I own a business within the community. Since y'all got warmed up on that fella, you're probably going to like exactly what I have to say. I heard a lot of, you know, the comprehensive plan. I've heard we're working on the comprehensive plan for 20 years. For 20 years, we're working on the comprehensive plan. I heard comments like, I feel, I believe. But the fact is, you guys represent people. Nobody came to me. Nobody came to my business and said, Steve, what would you think about a development going in? And it doesn't matter what particular development I'm talking about when it comes to me, but every person is a customer for me. Every customer is a customer for every other business within this community. On top of that, their housing costs, their income that we get within the community, the schools get money. It's a double-edged sword. I've had numerous prospective business owners come in and talk to me and ask me about my experience within the community. And overall, my experience was fairly good. But the reality of it is, they don't want to build here because of other people they've talked to, because of the issues they've had. And on top of that, one of their biggest concerns is we don't have enough population to support it. If a Roosters wanted to put up on the corner of Mink and Broad Street, they wouldn't do it. They said, we don't have the population. You know, population brings money to the community. It brings lots of money. And if we're talking $300,000 homes, we're talking people with very good incomes. We're not talking someone making $10 an hour buying a home. You know, and that income comes directly into our community. And I think that when we start telling these developers, you've got to meet all these requirements, and then if they do meet the requirements, we still say, well, we don't really like your development. We don't want you to build here, or it's not within our vision. I think maybe sometimes these should be put up to the community, because there's a few people that live around the development. We're always going to have issues with those people. If someone built next to my development, I might even be one of those people saying, I don't want that here. However, as a business owner, and as someone who lives in the community, worked in the community for a couple of decades, I think it's a mistake. I think it's a huge mistake. We talk about our roads. These roads have been crap for 25 years. It's not like they became crap in the last 10 years because of development. I worked these roads in the mid-90s as a police officer. And they're better now than they ever were back then, I can promise you that. You know, so I guess I don't understand why we say we're representing the community. And maybe I should have been more forthcoming, and I should come to more meetings, and I will continue to come to more meetings. That's my fault, I shouldn't have. But I think we're losing track of where we need to be. You say we don't wanna look at Pickerington, or we don't wanna look at Gahanna. Why not? Look at Pickerington. If you want a Thai restaurant or get a special pair of shoes fitted, you can find it in Pickerington. What do we have here? We got nothing in Pataskala besides the few little things that we have and have had for a very long time. You know, I've been in that building now for almost 6 years. I've got one new neighbor. 6 years. One new neighbor. What else are we doing in this community? Broad Street is open for development, yet nothing gets built. We've got the Jet Z behind my house, my building, and the development we've done in there has not been developed, and that's gonna really generate a lot of money for our community because there's not a lot of income tax coming in. I mean, an AEP training center and storage center doesn't have 500 employees, you know, and maybe we would have someone build in the Jet Z if we had a housing development that had hundreds of potential
1 minute,
employees.
sir. 1 minute.
So, I don't even need that minute. I guess I just want you to understand it. I think that we're losing track. You know, we do want to be like some of these other cities. Pataskala is not unique. The uniqueness of Pataskala is that we're the last little island around Columbus that needs development. You know, we're the last place in Columbus, and we have the ability to really do things right, but as we start pushing these things away, pushing developments away, and I know maybe this is the first one, but it's still one that potentially could have brought a lot of people to this community. You know, look at Etna. Look at all the development down there. My God, 10 years ago, if we would have worked hard enough, maybe we could have had that up in our part of the city. You know, and I know a lot of things have changed in the last 10 years, 20 years, 20 some years since I've been here. But I still think we're kind of treading, we're spinning in the mud. You know, I would like to see more business. Would you guys like to see more business on Broad Street? And I think that's a pretty easy question. Yeah, I mean, that's what we want. We want our corridor built. We want those things, but we can't do it if we don't have population for it.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
You got it. Any questions? I won't.
We're not gonna get into a back and forth tonight. It's kind of.
It's not a back and forth. It's a simple question.
Appreciate your comments.
Yep.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Anybody else wish to speak tonight? Yes, sir. Name and address, sir, and you have 5 minutes.
Bruce Massa, 150 East Broad Street, Columbus, Ohio. I stand here before you to let you know that I have a little background. I've been a realtor and a developer in Columbus, Central Ohio for 45 years. I'm the past president of the Columbus Board of Realtors, past president of the state chapter of the Society of Industrial and Office Realtors, and hold the designation of Counselor of Real Estate. By the way, I'm glad that Malcolm went before me because I used to be as tall as him when I went before him. So I've heard the recent pushback about lot sizes and subdivisions that were getting planned and brought before council and planning commission. And I wanted just to make a few comments about lot size and what it can do for and against affordability, and more important, for the current, future, and healthier city. Large lot development drives up costs to developers. The reason is simply that it takes more infrastructure to develop the land. More roadways, more sanitary sewer, more water line, more storm sewer, etc. This in turn makes the cost to build the home more expensive, making it unaffordable for some buyers like policemen, firemen, your EMS personnel, teachers, etc. It also costs more to maintain this infrastructure. Pataskala is in the path of development, and planning for all types of housing and development is imperative for the sustained growth of your city. Without rooftops, retail and restaurant development will continue to limit your options for your residents, and that means your residents have to drive farther outside of Pataskala to get the things they want, and that means the money spent will not flow into your city, but out of it. With more expensive housing, these opportunities push the opportunity of more convenience farther into the future. Industrial development should be encouraged in specified area, as they do not put a drain on city services and add money to your treasury. Those industrial businesses are attracted to area where there is ready available workforce, and with transportation costs rising, more people choose to live closer to their work. Businesses want employees that are well educated, and that attracts more businesses that will want to locate in Pataskala. As the growth of industrial and commercial continues in and around Pataskala, we should be ever mindful that the housing has to remain affordable in Pataskala. Finally, smaller lots do not necessarily mean lesser quality housing. To the contrary, homes on slightly smaller lots being built today by quality builders are attracting just as many quality-minded and qualified homeowners who want to live in your city. You must keep your city affordable to new residents. If you do, new homeowners will become an integral part of your city and contribute to making Pataskala a wonderful place to live, work, and raise your family. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to speak? Yes, ma'am. Name and address, please.
Linda Clayman, 7825 Jonelle Square, New Albany, 43054. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words tonight. As I said, my name is Linda Clayman, but I am the face of the property, 106 acres on Refugee Road, just west of me. So, I don't know, this feels a little hostile to me at the moment. That my family, this property, my family, along with a family friend, we've owned this since 1972. It was a farm back then and has been farmed ever since. As far back as I can remember, Howard Emsweiler has been the man farming it. And if you know Howard, you know that you could not find a better person or more faithful steward of any property. For 47 years, we have been a good and responsible neighbor and landowner in the community. And for 47 years, we've put our tax dollars here. We have taken our responsibilities for overseeing and managing the land very seriously. And we have tried to do the best job possible. Just a few years ago, we had an arborist come out to the property, and he looked at the woods that are on the property, and he suggested that we remove about 40 trees, which is a significant number. But on his advice, to promote a healthier wooded area, we had that taken care of. And also around that same time, it came to our attention that there might be an environmental problem because of possible underground fuel tanks that might have been buried. We did a lot of investigating, and we made certain that no fuel had ever been buried on the land. We did not want to contaminate the land in any way. Our property was always slated for development. And to that end, Southwest Licking Water and Sewer installed a water line along Refugee Road. I think it was about 15 years ago. We have talked with many developers through the years who have wanted to build homes. But no one else had a plan that incorporated family homes with open spaces for play adjacent to lifestyle low-maintenance homes with landscaped tranquil ponds. A place that would attract young growing family and the empty nester. Anyone who wanted to make Pataskala their home would not need to look outside of Pataskala for a full range of choices. EBS Ryan Homes has the vision, the experience, and the resources to manage and to oversee a successful realization of that. And that's what impressed us and assured us. They literally spent 2 years following all guidelines on infrastructure and any recommendations that were put forth. In fact, they offered up more than what was required, such as $50,000 for future traffic pattern changes, and offering, I think, about 50 trees to the city. They wanted they wanted and worked hard to be a home builder in Pataskala and build a community that we could all be proud of. Once again, thank you for listening, and I truly appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm that face on Refugee Road. I'm not a big bad developer. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? Yes, sir.
I guess I'm Todd Willis with Willis Engineering Surveying, 33 West Main Street, Newark, Ohio. And I'm here just to talk about some experiences I've had and some of the costs associated with development. The gentleman before me mentioned it, and as an engineer, we design these types of subdivisions a lot. I have no financial interest in this subdivision at all. I'm not part of the team or anything else, but I just saw it came up. And today, the cost per foot to build a road, water, sewer, curb, everything is about $400 to $500. So if you do that in your mind, 10 feet of frontage is, $4,000 to $5,000, which usually goes to the lot. Obviously, they're going to, have to raise the lot price those certain amounts to make those work. Now, the economy of scale works in both factors. Sometimes, you could make it work out a little less than $400 or $500 a foot, but in general terms, these types of subdivisions with the densities all packed into one area where you can get all your infrastructure built, keep the lot prices cheap, and then leave a bunch of space to open space. That's kind of what we almost have to do anymore unless we're going to develop a very expensive type of subdivision where we're doing a 1 acre lot, maybe 200 feet of frontage. It's a whole different ballgame, $1 million homes, things like that. We do that. So what he was saying about the cost is real. It's not made up numbers. We work with it every day, and we're seeing the cost come in all the time. The other project that I was associated with was very similar to this, was back in the early 2000s, late 1990s, called Park Trails, which was in Granville. It was actually in Granville Township, and Newark annexed the land. I don't know if you're familiar with it. They annexed the land so they could develop under Newark subdivision code rather than Granville's. The density was 4 times higher to the Newark. Well, there was a huge outcry about it, and the same issues were coming up. It was traffic and schools. So we did traffic studies. I'm associated with that project, and we met with schools and we worked with them, and ended up there were some fees that were paid for schools or whatever. But looking back 15 years ago, the estimates that were made back then for the students that were coming in schools and what it was going to be were completely way off. I mean, with maybe 10%, 15% of the actual enrollment is what ended up coming out of that subdivision. And the other thing was the traffic that everybody was talking about is on River Road. River Road's very similar to actually Refugee. Not as many lots as this one, but it's a similar type of road. They really didn't do hardly any improvements at all on it, and the traffic's not a problem there really at all. So just from experience of my time, with this type of development, it's probably what you're going to see. If you won't see the big lot subdivisions much anymore. It could change in 10 years if costs come back and people are willing to pay that much for land. But in today's world, it's just almost impossible to develop really any other way than this. I mean, financially get it done. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your insight, sir. Anybody else wish to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Connie Flema, P.O. Box 991, Pataskala, Ohio. After the meeting on March 18th, when we did have the Hunter's Crossing vote, I basically thought that I would go through and pull up some information regarding actual lots in different areas, whether they be in Granville, whether they be in New Albany, whether they be in another surrounding area. And I wanted to be able to share that with you. What I've just passed out to you is a plat of a subdivision in New Albany, close to one of the areas that actually works, is very close to the New Albany Road. In that subdivision, you will see that there are, I think I gave mine, may I use some?
You can use this.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I've highlighted 3 different lots, and then what I've done is if you look into the first page, you'll see one of those lots. It's actually 50 feet by 117 feet deep. That's actually smaller than, of course, what we were proposing in Hunters. You'll see the next page, the finished property there is 2,224 square feet above grade. The next picture, you will see an actual picture of that house, and as it sits on that property, which is an attractive home in a New Albany subdivision on a lot that's 50 by 117. The actual price in 2011 of that house was $250,000. You go to the next page, you'll see another similar lot in that subdivision. Its finished square footage is 2,852 square feet. You go to the next page, you'll see the attractiveness of that house and how it sits on that lot. And in regard to the setbacks, I wanted to make notice, Tom, you had mentioned that they were 5 feet apart. The houses would have been 10 feet apart, 5 feet on each lot.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Also, that price there was in 2011, $306,000. You go to the next platted lot, another 50 by 117 feet. We have a 2,583 square foot house, and you go to the next page and you'll see the attractiveness of that house. This type of thing is not a small, inexpensive, ugly home. They're not tiny houses. They're large, beautiful homes sitting on attractive lots that are smaller than the lots that are, or the type of lots that are being proposed in Pataskla. The next thing I wanted to hand out was a similar type situation, and we keep talking about our roots and where we're coming from and going. Actually, if you go back and you start looking at the original plats of Granville and Pataskla, you start realizing that large lots were not the way that we started. Downtown Pataskla, downtown Granville area did not have 1 acre lots. They did not have half-acre lots. For instance, on this particular handout, we see that there on the first page is a lot 55 feet wide by 98 feet deep. This is on one of the old original houses down in downtown Granville. You go to the next, it was built in actually 1918. The finished living area is 1,768 square feet. If you go to the next page, you'll see the street view of that house. An old house, very attractive with a nice front yard. You go to the next, and we have a strange lot on a square, 69 by 66 square feet. You go, it was built in 1911. It was 1,488 square feet. And you go to the next page, and you see that it's a nice, attractive 2-story home that is there and in Granville. And last but not least, we have the original plat or a portion of Pataskla that I want to pass out. The original lots in a portion of Pataskla, this would be just west of Main Street. These lots are 47.9 feet by 82 feet. I'm sure that any of the people that live here in Pataskla on these lots, and there's plenty of them, most all of the downtown area, would not be very happy to think that, I don't know where I've run out, but I'm going to use this for a second, that their house is not valuable or that it's not, they're not citizens that are part of our city. We go to the George Street and Jefferson Street, we see that those platted lots are developed with 2-story homes. And I have the street views on all of those and also the aerials for East Mill Street. I understand the defensiveness that I've seen tonight. I understand that people on this council do it because they're part of the city and they want to be here and they want to listen to constituents. But I have to say that every time I've been here and the constituents that are showing up are people who live next door to a subdivision and they don't want anybody else to be there. I also know that council members here tonight, some of you live in a multifamily condominium project. You actually live perhaps in a condominium or a type of development that does not have a large lot, but you live there and you're part of council and you support a lot of things that go on here. But you do not, thank you, but you do not and should not be willing to actually state that multifamily is wrong, that single families have to be in large lots. I've talked to a lot of you. I've been very honest and open with you about that. And I just want to, I've lived in Pataskla for years also. Now I live in Etna Township. But anyway, small lots are not bad. Small lots can be very valuable, can have beautiful homes. Diversity is what we're looking for. We will have large lots, we will have farmers, we will have smaller lots, we will have price ranges up here and down here, but that's what a community is. Now, if I have a 500-foot stretch of road and I put 10 50-foot lots on that, I have 10 lots there, or if I make each lot 100 feet wide and I go 1,000 feet, the city's taking care of 1,000-foot stretch of road, 1,000 feet of water, 1,000 feet of sewer, and 1,000 feet of storm. Talking about your infrastructure and your roads crumbling, help make that better by going with cluster design. In some areas, consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? All right, seeing none, introduction, discussion, and approval of consent agenda matters.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Powell. Second. Second by Mr. Hicken. Discussion and roll.
Carter? Yes. Walter?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Barstow?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
Hicken?
Yes?
Lee?
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda passes. On to reports. I will be looking for a motion tonight to appoint Mr. Brandon Gaelick to serve as Pataskala's rep on the Licking County Transit Board. If you have any questions for Brandon, we could bring him up for a brief couple of seconds, but I think you've seen that Mr. Brandon Gaelick has been coming to our council meetings. He's involved with the community and lives down on Main Street and has volunteered to jump on the transit board where nobody else has really come up and stepped forward. So he wants to get involved with the city is the bottom line. So if there's no questions for Brandon, then I'll be looking for that motion later on tonight. I want you to all get close to your microphones and say happy birthday to Jess. She'll be listening to this tomorrow, so happy birthday, Jess. Thank you. All your, hey, that was just off the charts. Let's try that again. Happy birthday, Jess.
You don't have to get that close.
Okay, all
We're
right.
good, we got it.
We got it.
You got it, okay. Let's see, had a great week last week, TrueCore, we did the groundbreaking for TrueCore up there across from Kroger's. They'll be starting to build in, I'd say 2 or 3 weeks, Scott, when they get all their stuff.
They're in the engineering review process now, so we're hoping to get comments back to them very soon.
Okay, very good, so TrueCore's coming to town. Nate's already left, I was gonna thank Nate. Don't forget if you know somebody that's having some issues, maybe might have a warrant for their arrest, let them know that on Saturday from 10 to 3, we are having our safe surrender right here in council chambers. You'll be able to come in and take care of any of those issues, and we promise you won't be arrested. Okay, Connie? All right, just remember.
It's not April Fool's joke, is it?
No.
Just making sure.
We had a great afternoon Friday. The rain held off and had several Vietnam vets show up, and we had a great time at Vets Memorial honoring our Vietnam vets for that day. And don't forget, May 18th will be our open house, grand opening at the police station. I'll let the chief talk a little bit more about the police station when we get to you tonight, sir. And I think that's just about it. Oh, the newsletter, again, the newsletter, I got it on Friday, so hopefully you guys are all getting it in the mail. It was done very nicely. A lot of good information in there, so appreciate that. BJ and Jess and everybody else that pitches in on the newsletter. Mr. Barstow, what do you got?
Just a couple things. Steve Hildebrand was here, we were at church with Steve, and he saw me after the council meeting. He spoke at the March 18th council meeting, and said he was very interested, very impressed with the discussion, and thought it was so well done, and so he congratulated members of council for doing that. I had a chance to walk through, get the sort of not the nickel tour, maybe the dime tour of the police station night. It's absolutely fantastic. It's absolutely, I cannot say enough good things about it. I was amazed and pleased at every part that I went to. I believe it was Sergeant Smith took me around and showed me everything. Just on the coffee, was very gracious to do that, but it's obvious that the department is very excited. So you can just go over there anytime, and they're like that building so much. They'll just take you around and show you all the neat stuff that they have. It is absolutely fantastic. And
We told you were gonna like it.
well, I think it's I like it. It's fantastic. It's just, but it's just the great thing is that we had this discussion. I talked to the mayor that kudos to the department for having a building that looks nice on the outside, but didn't have a lot of the expense on the outside. The expense is on the inside, with all of the many features that are really fantastic. And so I'm going to suggest, and I don't want to do this. We can't do this next week, next council meeting, but I'm going to suggest that we look at a way to schedule a council meeting, Chief, in your training room. I think is what you call it, the large room there. I think we can do that through announcement. I think technologically we can do that as well. So that would be great as a way to introduce the community to the facility. Take a look around at a little bit of it. But it's just absolutely awesome. Really impressed. Ms. Hayes, you'll be pleased to know that Rocky got me a sandwich this evening, and I got a few insights into his relationship with his younger sister, and we had a little talk about having a younger sister and how to handle that in a good way. I don't think he was that impressed, but this is where he is.
I will tell him tomorrow in class that you brought him up again.
He does a great job. He has a marketable skill. He can run that cash register like nobody's business. And that is that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Zetz.
I couldn't follow that if I wanted to. I have nothing.
Mr. King.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple items. I talked to Tommy about getting a Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting scheduled. We talked about having one at the Old Town Hall to refresh the committee about the work that we are getting quotes to complete. So I'm hoping to do that here in the very near future. Other facility things we're doing, in the approved 2019 budget, there's money to replace sections of the deteriorated back concrete parking lot. I've been working to get quotes on those, reaching out and trying to get local contractors to work on that stuff. So I anticipate at the April 15th meeting having legislation in front of council for a contract for that work. Also working to get all the quotes we need for the town hall renovations. And to have any quotes that we need approved by, any contracts we need approved by council. Also on April 15th council meeting. The Theater AC, the contractor I've been working with, was out of town last week on vacation. He's back in town. I heard from him this evening, and we are going to be talking tomorrow, so I'll be able to get an update to council on that. We'll be having another meeting tomorrow with Dan Walther, representing PRA, to continue talking about the pool transition. Kudos to Lanier Crawford, who went and earned his aquatic facility certification, which will come in handy as we use this year as a transition with the city starting to get back into some of the pool business, and then for the foreseeable future. So nice work, Lanier. Last thing I have to mention is Main Street. I put this into my council update this past Friday. Had a meeting last week with representatives from AEP. Mr. Walter was able to join us and did a site visit after the meeting. It appears that we have a resolution in the works for all of the items. There's one that came up regarding the Ivory Barn. The plan there was to put it on the conduit and electric on the CSX railroad right-of-way, which AEP has a master agreement with to do that sort of stuff. CSX has since sold and is now owned by Genesee, Wyoming, but it looks like there's gonna be a way to service them from the rear of the property. One of the other properties, there was a concern about a pedestal that was located on real close to a neighboring property line. That is gonna be able to be relocated and conduit run to the house to serve them. And then the last one, we're gonna be able to bump out into the city right of way. And sometimes AEP can be leery just because of the concern about in the future having to move that out of the city right of way. But down on Main Street, I don't think in any of our times we're gonna see any widening occur down there, so they'll be going in the right of way. As part of that, I have a meeting tomorrow at 10:30 with Chris Peters, who is the electrician who will be working on it, and we'll know more about scheduling at that time and let council know. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to mention, Andy, from the meeting, or?
The only thing I would add is that even if it were an easement and it had to be moved, you're talking about a 3-foot easement.
That's it.
So even if it had been in that easement and you wanted to widen Main Street, you'd have to pay to have it moved. So this is really irrelevant as
That's a good
far
point.
as future payment for having it relocated.
That's a good point.
So I think the plan is actually where the transformer is what we're talking about, not necessarily a pedestal, but the
The
transformer is being relocated in a place that's more secure for that transformer also.
Yes, yeah.
So it's, I think in all, it's a resolved issue.
Happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Execution of this plan, time-wise?
I'm meeting with Chris Peters tomorrow, we'll know more at that time.
So Chris will be able to do this work?
Chris is doing the installation of the conduit down through there. I'm gonna be boring it in, AEP will pull the lines through it.
Very good. Anything else for BJ?
No, but thank you to Andy for going.
I do appreciate it.
Glad to help, no problem.
Very good. Mr. Nicholson?
Thank you, Mayor. I was on vacation last week, so I apologize there was no report. We did close the books on March earlier this evening. I just want to let council know that, you know, on a year-to-date basis, we're running about 3.9% ahead of this time last year on income tax revenues, about $50,000 ahead of projections, so tracking pretty well so far. That's all I have.
Anything for Jamie? Welcome back, sir. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. Got just a few highlights in the report. The billing clerk position is open until this Friday. Then I have a scheduled a special PBR board meeting next Wednesday, the 10th, and then we can move forward with the interviewing process. The crews came across 2 service line leaks in the last couple weeks. One in Shawnee Loop North, one on Broadview Court. Both were the result of a pinhole that developed in the copper line. We replaced those lines with the newer polyplastic line that we require in all new developments going forward. There was also a water main leak that was discovered under Main Street along Mill Street on an old section of water main. The crews were able to go in and isolate that leaking area without disturbing Main Street and take care of the leak that way, which was a nice development. The Mill Street water line project started today. We've got 3 of the 5 service lines transferred over. Looks like we're still on schedule with hopefully finishing everything this week. The major problem being that they're calling for rain Thursday and Friday, so it could hinder the paving schedule that we have, and they push it into next week.
You said just the paving? That
Just the
might push
paving, not the water work. Outside of lightning and a tornado, we will be out there working on the water line. So.
Residents will have their water back, no boil alerts, it's just the paving that'll take a little more time.
That is correct, that is correct. And depending on the amount of rain, if it's just a light amount of rain, it's not gonna affect the paving work, but if it's heavy, they'll have to push it off. So. Included in the packets is the annual water reclamation facility report. That's the report that is not required by the EPA. The previous director used to do it. It's full of good information. It basically just summarizes what we've done at the WRF over the last year. So for the practice I wanted to continue. It's also available on the city website. The CCR report has been completed and sent to the EPA for review before we finalize that. I anticipate that being available by the next council meeting, pending the EPA's review and any comments they may have. And then the last thing I'd like to say is that there's a section meeting for the OWEA next Thursday, April 11th, and the department is taking part in one of 4 plant tours that make up that section meeting. So we'll be doing our tour from 12:45 to 1:45. Something I'm proud of the guys actually being involved in and wanting to do that. So I'll throw that out there. Outside of that, unless there's any questions from the council, that's all I have.
Anything for Chris tonight? Thank you, sir. Mr. Haynes.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 resolutions on for council tonight. The first is the 2019 ODOT road salt contract bid. Just like last year, we're looking for 1,800 tons of salt. I need to pass that resolution to be part of their annual contract and get the prices that ODOT gets. The second resolution is the intersection safety and capacity study. We did have that slated for this year within the budget. That's the study to evaluate 7 of the major intersections in the city rate them with regards to safety and capacity, rank them for improvement for priority, and then also, retime several of the signals on Broad Street, the ones that aren't included in the Broad Street corridor timing project. We'll retime the rest of those, and then we'll get recommendations for different improvements for the top 5 intersections in that study. Beyond that, updates on construction projects. Oak Meadow Drive, we'll be putting that out to bid this Thursday, and opening bids on April 30th. We're looking forward to that one. And then both the ramp and the Tesla Safe Travel Plan, we will open bids on that next Thursday. Happy to answer any questions.
I've got a couple. I just don't remember, who's the consultant on the timing project?
GPD Group.
So it's the same as the impact?
Correct.
Okay, good. That's what I can see that you're doing traffic study, you're doing traffic counts in both of these, and they're obviously overlapping on a couple of the intersections.
Correct.
They're sharing data, I hope, between those two contracts?
Absolutely, getting some economy of scale because of that.
Perfect. And the other traffic counts you mentioned in here about the downtown corridor being done during school, are the other counts going to be done at the same time?
They will all be done at the same time, hopefully in April.
And then second to last question. The 7 intersections that were picked, how were they, what was the criteria for those?
That was basically me and the consultant looking at, well, mostly me looking at those from issues we've had around the city, from complaints I've received, and looking at the major intersections in the city that we think we have issues with.
And I'm sure you're aware of this as well as GPD, funding, OPWC funding comes from casualties, unfortunately. So deaths that happen or accidents that happen, the higher accident rate, the more funding is available. Did we look at that as a criteria at all with some of these? I don't think we had a lot of deaths through accidents in these locations, but if there were potentially an intersection that had that or high data or crash data, those would be the ones that I would look at for criteria for trying to get funding out of OPWC.
Absolutely, and not only OPWC, but MORPC and
very much so.
Tony as well. So we wanted to have that safety component so that we could position ourselves to get some of that funding in the future. And we're starting to look at what those opportunities could be for not only Broad Street, but some of these other ones that are off Broad Street.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Alan? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I just wanted to also talk about drainage, and we had a street committee meeting this evening, and I'll just kind of incorporate that in, because basically that's everything we talked about tonight was exactly what Alan just covered. But at the next one, we do need to touch on drainage, because the mayor and I were talking about some of the spots that have been especially bad. And Summit at the S-curve is pretty dangerous, with the way the ditches are and the amount of water seen, so it's probably time to pull that back out and just give everybody a update on where we stand with our drainage items.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else for Alan? Alan, I just had one quick thing. Mr. Fox had mentioned that the whole project got gravel on one side of the road, both down Summit and down Havens Corners. Did you check that to make sure that berm was totally
Yes.
gravel?
Yes, they did add the berm, like you said.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Scott, what do you got for me tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. We're tentatively scheduled to have a comprehensive plan steering committee on Thursday, April 18th from 7 to 9 p.m. in council chambers. I'm just waiting to hear back from all the members of the steering committee to confirm that date works for them. And also, I'm pleased to report that our zoning inspector was back from medical leave starting today, although in a limited capacity, but we're very happy that Mr. Blake has come back to help us out. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'm happy Mr. Blake's back too, because I'm getting tired of the mattress signs and the we pay cash for your house signs, and yeah, I'm glad he's back. They must have found out that he was in the hospital or something, because yeah, they came out of the woodwork. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Anything for Scott? All right, Lanier?
Thank you, Mayor. I got quite a few things to touch on today. Project-wise, Foundation Park, the fence job for these softball diamonds is complete. We added a gate and also reset a lot of the fence posts that were in the outfields in all 3 diamonds. So that job is complete as of last Thursday. The softball pads that we will be pouring, we're going to start those tomorrow at 10 a.m. So those should be complete and cut by Thursday. and hopefully ready to be used the following weekend for the organizations who are utilizing softball diamonds there. The holding tank, with the Ventura Brothers doing the Mill Street project, we had to hold off after a three to 4 week lead time on the construction of the holding tank. So I'm hoping to get with EC Babbitt and also Ventura Brothers to set up a time that's after the Easter egg hunt. So as soon as the Easter egg hunt is complete, I'm hoping that we can utilize that off week for a construction date. So I'll keep you guys in the loop on that. Liberty Park project, NatureWorks grant. I'm hoping to receive a bid proposal this week from our engineering firm, and hopes that I can bring a legislation to you April 15th to put that out to bid. And in front of some of you, and I will make sure to get Mr. Hicken and also Mrs. Carter copies of the concept plans for the 3 parks that we're proposing. Those are more so preliminary plans at this point. I just received them today, so I haven't had an opportunity to necessarily digest them myself. But what we're planning to do is have an open house, bring the community to really voice their concerns and also their ideas on these concepts. That way we can take it back to OHM and maybe have them tweaked based on what the community wants. And then once that's said and done, we can utilize these for future park planning. And pool. Last week we had backflow valve replaced at the pool, and they're coming out tomorrow to open it back up. So we'll start that process, get the pool running for the remainder of the year. So other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anything for, yes, ma'am.
I don't know if this is your jurisdiction, or like, I think it is, the walking bridge to Pataskala Ridge. Have you noticed it?
No, I was just.
Well, and it's kind of buried down there. I was driving down Mill Street and I looked down, and like the concrete structure of it is beautifully vandalized. Like it is, there's a lot of spray paint on it. So I don't know if that's you, what that streets, where that falls.
Mr. King?
It's kind of both, so we will certainly come up with a plan to get it taken care of.
And it's
Appreciate
only
you
what I
pointing
saw
it out.
from the street, so I don't know what other colorful words are written on it, but it was,
We'll probably have
it's
to
pretty
paint it.
large.
Okay. Thank you for the
All
update.
right, sure.
Linear, just a quick question, the Easter egg hunt, you seemed to me that you were saying you hope that the holding tank project would happen after that?
After.
Is that absolutely going to be after that?
It's absolutely going to be after
Okay.
the Easter egg hunt, the 13th.
Perfect.
This
I
is
just wanted to-
Saturday.
yeah, so just making sure.
That's next week.
There's
We'll
gonna be,
make sure
there'll
that
be
we're
only
not-
like 3,000 or 4,000 kids out there, so it probably is a
Yes.
good idea to hope that it's
Yes.
happening.
Good.
Perfect.
100%.
So many funny things.
Very good.
Anything else on there? When's your first soccer game?
This Saturday. I'm waiting for it to start.
500 kids?
Yes, we're at 500, and it's been a whirlwind of trying to schedule and make sure we all have locations, since I actually had to make the executive decision to not use a piece of the park to let it heal, to not incur more costs in the future. So it's hitting me hard right now.
Very good, sir.
Thank you.
Chief Brooks, what do you got for me?
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor said earlier, we are in the station. We've been in just over a week and working out a few small bugs, but other than that, it's going well. Barstow said he came over and took a tour today, and it's nice to see him. We offer the same to anybody who wants to come over and take a look. That's all I have.
Anything for Chief?
Sure, I do.
Yep.
Can you remind me when the open house is again?
The May 18th,
May 18th.
10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Thank you.
You'll all be getting, we worked, BJ and I worked with Jess this morning. We got a super good list of folks that we're gonna invite. And of course, if you have some folks that you wanna invite, please check with Jess, make sure that, we probably already had them on the list, because we went from A to Z this morning trying to make sure we covered everybody. But if you feel you need to reach out, please do, so we can make sure that everybody touched this project from 4 years ago to today. So, you know, we got the Pat Sagers and the Brian Lenzos, and we reached all the way back to folks that, like I said, touched this project from day one. So but feel free to call Jess and she'll add it to the list, and we'll keep sending out invitations until May 18th, if we have to. All right? Yes.
Chief, you were kind enough to answer me on an individual call from me to you regarding kind of like an explosion that keeps being heard in the old city and village. I then got I think our website had something on there about seismic testing as well. But I think the seismic testing was after that. Did you find any?
We did not locate, it was definitely a firework in the beginning. One of the officers actually did see, there was a firework go off, but he couldn't get to the area that it came from.
Okay.
So I think it was probably a combination of both.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell the chief, thanks for setting up the tour. We had some chiefs come out from my department. We're getting ready to start, from our fire department, we're getting ready to start some building projects. Mayor, Mr. Hicken, accompanied, but well done. You guys thought that out very well. The building is gorgeous. Robertson did a great job. We also went up to 405 up off of Morrison, looked at another Robertson project. I mean, just the little extra things like the hallway, you know, the things you wouldn't think of. Which kudos to you guys, because you guys really thought that out. And I'm super excited that you guys were able to get it. You deserved it. The city deserves it. Well done.
We've had many departments come out, and as they think about either in the future or they're in their planning stages right now, go through ours and take notes, and they're just blown away, as you were. Is it possible to sell those blueprints and make some money? Mr.
I think
Director?
Robertson will do that.
Yeah,
we don't own ours.
We don't own our own blueprints. We paid for them.
I doubt it.
You don't. We've been down there.
That's crazy. Okay, well.
I just want to say.
Well done.
Yeah, no, as Tommy talking about going to different places, I get a chance to go to a lot of different police stations, sheriff's departments around the area, and this is just really, very much really at the top. It's really, really great, so, awesome.
All right, committee chair reports, let's see. I'm sure Tim has one for me. Go ahead, Tim.
I don't know, it seems like we've had a bunch of utility committee meetings lately. Chris mentioned a couple of things. We had a committee meeting on the 20th. One, we definitely talked about the Mill Street. I don't think I need to revisit that. He gave the utility committee, and then I also talked to Mrs. Hayes, because it's in her ward, and I think you've also begun to send things to her, because it's in her ward, so I'll let that one go. We don't need it. We talked a little bit about the fact that the EPA issued their exhibit to Hull, and they're starting the design phase of the water treatment plant upgrade. And then we continue to look and evaluate as a committee itself, the rate structure and how, when we finally roll out a possible rate change, how that's gonna look. The latest phase had us looking at unforeseen capital expenditures in the future. I think that's a good thing to look at before we come together again, but we will be scheduled to come together again fairly soon, probably next week, so for those looking at the committee. And my thanks to the administration and Jane for always providing the graphs and the stuff that we need to crunch all those numbers. When we finally begin that discussion for council to make the decision as a whole, we'll make sure that council all gets a summary of what we have discussed. Chris and I are, we'll work on it.
Yeah.
So that everybody knows all the stuff that we looked at, and then come that night and be prepared to have the conversation.
I think a good summary of how we arrived at what the recommendation, I assume, will be.
So, that's it for me.
Mrs. Carter?
Yeah, there was a couple additional things from the street committee meeting, that I wanted to just point out. The Taylor Road path, we talked about that. ODOT, what did they say, May timeframe, early May. We'll be out to, hopefully, can get some more asphalt so they can finish that project up, thinking by the end of June. Is that what we were talking? So, that one is still on the radar, so if you get those questions, it's still being worked on by ODOT. The Taylor Road drainage project has found some difficulties, some additional challenges. Apparently there's water on one side and sewer on the other from Southwest Licking. And so trying to find some creative ways to work around the water and sewer lines and without creating more problems or incurring a substantial amount of additional costs. So that project is, continues to be a work in progress. And then finally, something that we discussed at the end of the committee meeting that's kind of interesting is talking about, development impact fees from developers. We looked at communities, well, Alan's looking at communities like, Pickerington and, what was it, Dehanna? Canal Winchester, who, have a formula that they've come up with that would have a development fee for a developer based on the amount of houses and various different elements. So he's going to do some research and put together, some examples of what other communities would do and see if that's something that we would be interested in doing as well, if it's something that would work here. So that would potentially help address some of our infrastructure concerns and things of that nature, depending on who was coming. And so that was the additional things we talked about.
Anything for, Mal? Any other committee chair reports?
Mr. Mayor, we're gonna have I'm gonna go with Jamie and Kathy, we're gonna set up a finance committee. Probably not until May, but just FYI.
Okay. All right, unfinished business, nothing. On a new business, ordinance 2019-4334 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Powell. Kathy, when you're ready.
Ordinance 2019-4334, this is the first reading, an ordinance to rezone property located on West Broad Street, southwest parcel number 064-307-692-00.000, totaling 4.85 plus or minus acres in the city of Pataskla from the GB General Business GB zoning classification to the R10 High Density Residential R10 zoning classification.
Discussion? All right, on to resolutions, resolution 2019-026, a resolution authorizing participation in the ODOT road salt contracts awarded in 2019. So moved by Mr. Walther.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Powell, I do believe. Discussion and roll.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow.
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter, Walther,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2019-027, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to execute a contract with Gloss, Pyle, Schomer, Burns, and DeHaven, Inc. to perform the City of Pataskala intersection safety and capacity study.
So
Moved by Mr. Walther.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hicken. Discussion and roll.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2019-028, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to enter into an agreement with the Licking County Health Department for citywide mosquito treatment for the calendar year 2019.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion? When will that commence and start?
Spray will be, right before Memorial Day.
Right before Memorial Day and stretch to,
We'll do 2 or 3 depending on the necessity, usually the last one's right before Labor Day.
when's your first movie night?
First movie night is
June
June
4th?
14th.
14th?
Yeah.
June 14th, there we go. Straight from
Very good.
Spray the night of the movie.
No.
Yeah, that's the plan.
That was, Tony.
No.
Serious.
Roll call, please.
That was June.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Resolution passes. On to motions. Motion to confirm my appointment of Brandon Gaelick to serve as Pataskala's representative on the Licking County Transit Board.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Walters, seconded by Mr. Barstow. Discussion? And roll.
Pickens,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter, Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Congratulations, Mr. Gaelic. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
He's asleep already? Okay, well,
Not yet.
I'll wake him up. Okay. On to additional, any other motions tonight? Okay. Additional citizens' comments. Anybody wants to speak about a topic that we've discussed tonight, you're welcome to approach the podium and give your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Anybody wish to speak tonight? All right, Mr. President of the Council, what do you got?
Mr. Mayor, I move we move into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G3, for a conference with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involved in the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent court action. Invited into the executive session is B.J. King, City Administrator, and Brian Zetz, Law Director.
I have a motion.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Powell. Mr. Zetz, I have a question for you. Is this is a two-parter?
Yes, it is.
And Mr. Zetz. Oh, I'm sorry, I was kind of looking over, but
Look right at me.
I'm sorry. Mr. King and Mr.
Well, I can't remember
Zetz.
how we did this before. I know we have a couple topics to talk about, but I don't think we ever actually split it up into separate motions. I think. No, recuse yourself.
I think we split it a couple times when we did have two distinct things to
We
talk about at two different
And we
things,
do.
so,
Because I voted to be in one and recuse myself.
That was so we do the same thing
So
again.
can you give me a little description on the first one, and then we'll vote on that, and then we'll.
Okay, I'll withdraw my, if Mr. Powell will withdraw his second, I'll withdraw my motion as we do it.
Okay.
I withdraw my second.
All right.
All right.
Do we need to vote on that?
No.
Go ahead,
So,
sir.
thank you, Mr. Powell, thank you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Mr. Zetz. So, Mr. Mayor, I move we go into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G3 for a conference with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involved in the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent court action. Invited into the executive session is B.J. King, City Administrator, and Brian Zetz, Law Director. The purpose of this executive session is to discuss the ongoing Fannin and Deagle litigation.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion? And roll.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Pickens.
Yes.
Okay, that's executive session number one. What do
Mr.
you got
Mayor,
for me? Yes,
I
sir.
move, we go into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G3 for a conference with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involved in the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent court action. Invited into this executive session are B.J. King, City Administrator, and Brian Zetz, Law Director. Mr. Mayor, the purpose of this executive session is to discuss the ongoing Licking Heights BZA litigation.
Okay,
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
for the record, I will be attending the first executive session, and then when the second part begins, I will recuse myself and come downstairs. So for the record, when I come down, I'll let Kathy know to mark the time.
Okay. Any other discussion? And roll.
Carter,
Recuse.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow.
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Pickens,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes executive session at 8:39, and folks, I probably would, probably gonna be a long evening, so.
Has Mrs. Carter been behaving herself?
Oh, yeah.
Need a motion to come out of executive session.
Yeah.
Need a motion to come out of executive session, moved by Mr. Barstow, I'm sorry.
Second.
Mr. Powell, and seconded by Mr. Barstow. Discussion and roll.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter.
Which executive section? For her, it'd have to be the first one and the second one, wouldn't it?
We don't have to break down the executive sessions, do we?
She recused herself.
Just recuse yourself now.
Yeah, just.
She did.
All right, out of executive session at 9:40. So. We're gonna go round and round. I guess that's all we got left on the old agenda tonight, so. We'll start with Mr. Hickman.
I have nothing at this time.
Okay. Mrs. Carter?
I had a whole bunch, but now I'm tired, so I don't know.
Mr. Powell?
I have nothing.
Mr. Barstow?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I know we come to my attention that the city, I want to talk to ask Mr. King about this, that the city may have accepted fees for portions of the Licking Heights construction project.
That is correct. Inspection fees for the infrastructure that would be associated with public improvements.
And so, have we gone up there and done any inspections?
I believe on a retention basin,
Okay, and that's been it?
that has been it.
Okay, and so this is, I mean, I drive by there.
And also soil erosion control and silt fence that, you know, if it's not up, we're the ones who are responsible for making
Okay,
sure it's up.
okay, so that's to the extent, do you know approximately how much that was, do you remember? I mean,
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay,
Those are
okay.
submitted to,
and those are,
I think it's
the
zoning department.
city still has those monies,
we do, they're deposited into an inspection fund.
special fund account, okay, so they haven't been distributed or anything like that?
Not at all.
Okay, so I mean, considering that the litigation's going on in Common Pleas Court, I think there might be a wise path to refund those inspection fees back to the district, given that, you know, the BZA litigation, where we're at loggerheads in that. So I would just open it up for discussion. I think that's an appropriate move at this point.
That's not a motion yet, I guess.
No, I'm just
Yeah,
open
that for
discussion,
I
yeah.
guess I would also, we do still have that case pending.
Correct, that is correct. That's now been briefed, but I couldn't tell you when, but the court will eventually issue a decision, and it could be a while.
I'm just gonna move, that the administration be directed to refund the fees that Mr. King just described.
That's a motion?
Yes, sir.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Hicken. Any discussion on that? Mr. Walter?
I guess I'm just gonna add that, that I agree with Mr. Barstow about the inspection fees being refunded until such time as the case is resolved, the BZA case is resolved, and then if it is proper for us to accept fees at that point and conduct inspections on public improvements, absolutely we should.
I agree.
Any other discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter.
I'm recusing myself from the vote.
And Walter?
Yes.
Motion passes. Any other motions or discussions tonight?
I don't have anything, but it was my turn. I don't have
Right.
anything other than what I discussed.
Okay, Mr. Walter?
I just wanted to mention the Easter egg hunt. I'm tired too. I agree with Mel. I'm tired, but I wanted to tell you there's 25,000 eggs that are going to be stuffed here this next weekend. Anybody wants to come out and stuff some eggs? But they will be, I'll bet you 3,000 to 4,000 kids out there for that Easter egg hunt. It's an exceptional site, and it's one that we've gotta thank the Lions Club for doing. It's just a fantastic, event, so.
And a good thing that there's no septic tank.
And thank goodness the septic tank project will have not
Yes, the
started.
restrooms will be working for all those little kitties.
So we don't need kids in the pool.
All
I have
right,
nothing.
Mr. Lee,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
got a motion to adjourn, seconded by Mr. Powell. Mr. Barstow.
Get you a place of breakfast.
Discussion and roll.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes?
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned, put your seats down.
Put your seats down, Mr. Carter.
I mean, it's, my brother must have been in the car.
So doors open at 7, I'll just see you, my friend.
See you, Tom. Outside of Augusta.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Go up the main drag, turn right.
I know what.
Was it really? You got pictures or something?